As part of Linux commands for beginners, after going through all the important commands related to managing files and folders and also system commands, now it is time for us to understand. As part of this sectional module, we'll get started with overview of diff command. Once we understand the uses of the diff command using diff space -- help, we'll actually prepare dataset to explore diff command in Linux. Then we'll actually understand the output of diff command by comparing two simple files. Then we'll see how to compare files ignoring blank lines and white spaces and also ignoring case. Once we understand these details, we'll also go to the details about how to improve the comparison using additional options. Sometimes we might want to compare the data in the files by having them side by side. Diff provides those features. We will explore those details along with a process called as unified comparison. After going through all these details, we'll also spend some time in understanding how to compare folders, not just files, using diff command. We'll be exploring quite a few important options related to diff in the pursuit of comparing files and folders in Linux using this command called as diff. Diff is a very, very important command from the perspective of troubleshooting the issues related to data and also code, and hence make sure you are really comfortable with diff. As part of the sectional module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux. We should be able to use diff command to compare files as well as folders. Before getting into the actual examples, let's see the usage of diff command. To get the usage of diff command, we can actually say diff -- help, hit enter. We should be able to see quite a lot of details with respect to diff command. Diff can be used to see the differences between the files and also to see the differences between the folders. There are quite a few control arguments which actually gives us a lot of features with respect to comparing files and folders. One of the important one is -r or -- recursive. It can be used to recursively compare all the files and folders between two different folders. We'll see examples so that you understand what I'm talking about here. Also, when it comes to comparing the contents of the files and folders, we should be able to use -i or -- ignore case. It will just ignore the case and it will just compare based upon the strings without worrying too much about the case. Also, there are quite a few options dealing with spaces. You can deal with the trailing spaces. You can ignore them while comparing using these options. You can also ignore all spaces using these options. Also, you can ignore blank lines while comparing using these options. Like this, there are quite a few options. That being said, let's start performing the tasks. We'll start with comparing the files, then we'll also get into the comparing the folders. Also, we'll see a few examples with respect to dealing spaces, lines, so on and so forth. Let's deep dive and understand this very important command in detail by performing hands-on tasks with simulated datasets. As part of this sectional module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. So far, we have seen the overview of diff command. Now let's make sure we have a data folder quite a few times in the past. Let's see what we have under the home directory. There is a data folder, however, it might got corrupted over a period of time. As we have taken the backup, let's restore using the backup and then we'll take it further. For now, I'm actually saying rm-rf data to remove the data folder. Now I should be able to say tar-xvf data.tar. Hit enter. It will take care of restoring the data folder. Once the data folder is restored, we should be able to get into the data folder. We have several folders in this. We'll be picking retail_db to explore diff command in detail. I'll be creating another copy of retail_db with the name retail_db_csv. So let me say cp-r, then retail_db, then retail_db_csv. Now we have two datasets, retail_db and retail_db_csv. Using diff, we should be able to compare the folder or individual files as well. First, let's start with individual files, then we'll take it further. However, as of now, both the folders are identical, and hence, if we just try to compare, it will not show any results. To make sure we get the actual results when we use the diff command, let's manipulate some data in retail_db_csv, then we'll take it further. To manipulate, we can actually go to retail_db_csv. There is a folder called as the departments. Let's get into the departments folder. The reason why I have chosen a departments folder is because it is a small dataset. Now let me say ls-ltr. We have a file by name part-50. Now let's say cat, then part-50 to preview the data. You can see that it contains 6 records. Now let me open this part-50 using VA editor. You can choose your favorite editor. If you are not comfortable using VA editor, you can use Nano or You can also use some other editor on your Windows based machine, and then you can actually copy paste the content and you can take it further. Now let me actually change fitness to fitness with small f rather than capital F. So this is one of the difference we have. Then let me say footwear. Instead of WEAR, let me say WARE, and the typo with respect to data. Now let me add few empty lines here. Let me add few empty lines here also. Let me remove the space here, and also let me add spaces before as well as after. With 4 apparel, I'm going to add before. With 6 outdoors, I have added towards the end. You can see that the cursor is after few blank spaces after outdoors. So we have manipulated quite a few things in this file. You can play with it and you can come up with quite a few manipulations based upon your interest, and you can take it further. Now let me save. I have come out of it. Now let me go to the data folder by saying cd data. Now let me say ls-ltr. We have retail underscore db as well as retail underscore db underscore csv. Now let me say ls-ltr retail underscore db, then departments, and also ls-ltr retail underscore db underscore csv departments, then part -5 zeros. You see the size of this file is 77 bytes, whereas the size of this file is only 60 bytes. So looking at the size itself, we can see that there are some differences between these two files. Now let's go to the details about how to get the differences by using a diff command. Using a diff, we'll be comparing these two files and we'll be trying to interpret the differences. If at all we have to fix, we can fix as well. Comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. So far we have got the usage of diff command, and also we have prepared the dataset to explore differences by using diff command in Linux. That being said, the two files which we want to use for simple comparison using diff are nothing but these ones. Let me say ls-ltr return underscore db, then departments, then part -5 zeros. The other file is nothing but return underscore db underscore csv, then departments, then part -5 zeros. You can see the details here. This file is of size 77 bytes, whereas this file is of size 60 bytes. That being said, the simple usage of diff command will be like this. Diff, then you have to pass the two arguments. It can be the file names like this. So I'm picking the first file name, I'm passing it as first argument, then picking the second file name, I'm passing it as second argument. There are no control arguments that are passed here. We are only passing the file names as arguments to the diff command. Now you can actually see the output. Now the differences are displayed. However, you should be in a position to interpret these things. You see, for each and every line, there is a less than and greater than symbol. And also you see some numbers here, and also you have these hyphens. You need to understand all these details so that you can interpret these details. First, let's start with this. So in this case, it is saying the lines 1 to 3 from the first file, which is nothing but this one, are being compared with 1 to 7 lines in this file. So it have compared the lines from 1 to 3 from the first file with the lines from 1 to 7 with this file, and it is displaying the differences here. With respect to the first file, you can see the details here. With respect to the second file, you can see the details here. Also, you see there are symbols such as less than and then greater than before each and every line that is being emitted from these files. Less than means the records are actually coming from the first argument, or the lines are actually coming from the first argument. Greater than means the lines are actually coming from the second argument, which means these are the lines from the file which is passed as first argument. These are the lines that are coming from the file which is passed as second argument. After that, you again see these numbers. In this case, the lines 5 to 6 from first file are being compared with the lines 9 to 14 in the second file. These are the lines 5 and 6 from the first file. These are the lines between 9 to 14 from the second file. This is how you should be able to interpret the results that are generated by diff command. Also keep in mind that the results are displayed in groups. This is one group of results, this is another group of results. Within each group of results, the details from the first file and the second file are actually separated by this line with 3 hyphens. This is how you should be able to interpret the results generated by the simple diff command. Now let's go to the details about improving the comparisons when the requirements are to ignore the blank lines or white spaces, so and so forth. We'll be exploring the details as part of the next lecture. As part of this sectional module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. So far we have got an overview of diff command, and also we have prepared datasets so that we can explore diff command in detail. As of now, after taking the copy of return_db, I have manipulated this file so that we have differences between the original file and also this file. You can actually see the output of cat command on top of original file, as well as the file which we have updated to compare and see the differences. You see, with respect to this line, we have WER as spelling for where, whereas it is WRE. And also with respect to the last line, there is a space between fan and shop, whereas in this there is no space. On top of these differences, we also have empty lines. You can see empty lines as part of the new file. We also have empty lines here. Also with respect to this one, there are some white spaces at the beginning. I think there are some white spaces at the end as well for some of the lines. So these are some of the differences which are there between the original file, which is this one, and the new file, which is this one. Now let's understand how to deal with white spaces as well as empty lines while getting differences using diff command. For that, let's say diff, then let's pass the original file name as the first argument, then the updated file as the second argument. Already we have spent time in understanding the output that is generated by diff command. Even if you add additional control arguments to control the behavior, the output will be displayed in similar manner unless and until you want to format this output. That being said, let's start with dealing with empty lines. For that, we should be able to use -B like this. It will take care of ignoring empty lines. However, if you run this, you will not see any difference because it will only ignore the empty lines at the end when there are no differences. If there are differences, then it will not ignore the empty lines. The reason why we are seeing the output same as before is because after these empty lines, we have this difference, and also after these empty lines, we have this difference. That's why it is actually not ignoring the empty lines when we use diff-B. Now let's understand how to deal with white spaces. There are multiple ways to deal with white spaces. Let's say diff-help. Now let's scroll up here. There are quite a few arguments with respect to white spaces. You see here there is a trailing space. There is ignore space change, ignore changes in the amount of white space. Also we have ignore all space. You can use -Z to ignore trailing space. You can use -W to ignore all spaces. When they say ignore all spaces, even when it comes to the fan shop, we have space in between fan and shop in original file. However, in the new file, we have removed the space. Even that one will be ignored. Now let's start with -Z. Then we'll actually see the -W as well. You can see the -Z here, and you can actually see the differences between the previous command and this command. The reason why the outdoors is gone is because we have trailing spaces at the end of the outdoors. You can actually open this file. Let's say view, and then let's copy, then paste. Now you can see that there are few spaces after outdoors, whereas in the original file there are no spaces. That's why it was showing as a difference when we say diff-B, but when I change to diff-B-Z, it have ignored these trailing spaces. That's why it is not showing up as a difference. For rest of the stuff, it is showing as a difference. Now let's improvise on this diff command by replacing this -Z with -W. It will ignore all spaces while comparing. Now you can see the output here when it comes to diff-B-Z. You can see the difference with respect to fan shop because there is a space between fan and shop in the original file, whereas in the updated file there is no space. It was showing as difference when we use -Z, but when we switch to -W, the difference is gone. Even the apparel difference is gone. There are leading spaces with respect to apparel in updated file. In the original file, there are no spaces. But it is still showing the differences related to fitness and footwear, because with respect to fitness, F is capital in original file, in updated file F is in lowercase. With respect to footwear, there is a spelling difference between the original file and the updated file. That is why these two are showing as differences. Now it is also showing some blank lines here as differences, but it is not showing all the blank lines. Let's review the updated file by saying view, then paste. It is not copied, let me copy. Now let me paste. Now let me hit enter. You can see that there are a few additional empty lines here. However, these are not shown. It is because we have used diff -B-W. Now let me remove -B and see how the behavior will be. It will show few additional empty lines as differences. Let me remove this. Let me hit enter. You can see the empty lines showing up as a difference. So only when we have empty lines towards the end, after which there are no differences, those will be ignored because of diff -B. Otherwise, empty lines will not be completely ignored. Even though the documentation says ignore empty lines when it comes to -B, it need not work in all the scenarios. There are some customized ways which can be leveraged to ignore all the empty lines or blank lines. We don't need to worry too much about those details at this time. As we have understood how to deal with empty lines as well as blank spaces, now it is time for us to explore how to get the differences ignoring the case. Those details will be covered as part of the next lecture. As part of the sectional module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. After getting an overview of diff command and preparing the datasets, we are actually exploring diff command by applying standard requirements. One of the requirement is to ignore blank lines or white spaces. Already those details are covered as part of the previous lecture. And the standard requirement is to compare files ignoring the case. First, let's understand what is the meaning of comparing the files or comparing the contents of the files ignoring the case. Then we'll actually see the example of how to use diff command while comparing the files ignoring the case when it comes to comparing the data in those files. First, let's come up with two strings. They're nothing but hello and then hello. In the first string, all the characters are in lowercase. In the second string, all the characters are in uppercase. When it comes to comparing these two strings, if we are not ignoring the case, then these are not equal. These two are two different strings. However, if you are ignoring the case, then these two are equal. Even if one character is different, even then when it comes to not ignoring the case, they are not equal. For example, if you take the two strings as hello with all lowercase and then capitalized hello where only the first character is in uppercase, rest in lowercase, even these ones are not equal when it comes to not ignoring the case. If we ignore the case, even these two are equal. If we ignore the case, all these three are equal. You can have any character in any case if we start ignoring the case while comparing. Now let's review the contents of our files which we are going to use to explore diff command. The first one is nothing but retail_db, then departments, then part-50. Let me say cat rather than view. Let me say cat retail_db, then departments, then part-50. Then let me say cat retail_db_csv, then departments, then part-50. Now you see, with respect to fitness, here all characters are in lowercase, whereas here all characters are in uppercase. Now instead of saying diff retail_db departments, then part-50, then retail_db_csv, then departments, then part-50. If we actually say a diff -i is the one which is used to ignore the case. Let's see whether it will work or not. If not, we will actually see the usage and then we'll take it further. You can see the output here. As part of the output, the fitness is missing. Even though there is a difference with respect to fitness because of the case mismatch, still it is not showing as part of the output because we are using -i. However, rest of the differences are showing up without any gaps. Now let's improvise this command. Let me actually scroll down here. Now instead of saying just diff -i, let me add the additional control arguments such as -B and -w and see how it look like. Almost all the differences should be gone except the difference related to the footwear because of the spelling mismatch. That being said, let me say diff -i -B, then -w, hit enter. Now you can see the difference related to footwear and also these blank lines. Rest of the differences are gone. So -i can be used to actually compare the contents of the files ignoring the case, while -w can be used to compare the contents of the files ignoring white spaces, whereas -B can be used to compare the files ignoring the blank lines. As part of this section or module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. In this lecture, let's go ahead and see a few additional options with respect to diff command. These options can come handy to get the output in a much better readable format. The two options are nothing but -u, which stands for unified, and also -y to compare the contents of two files side by side using two columns. Let's start with -u, then we'll actually go to the details related to -y. First, let's say diff -u, then retail_db, then departments, then the file name, which is nothing but part-50. Then the second file is nothing but retail_db_csv, then departments, then part-50. When we just use diff without -u, the output is something like this. Let me remove -u here. Now let me run this. You can see the output here. We have already gone through the details about this output. We understood how to interpret this. When it comes to the interpretation, whether you use diff or diff -u, it is almost same. If you do not use -u, it uses less than for the first file and greater than for the second file, whereas with -u, it uses hyphen for the first file and plus for the second file. You can see the details here. These entries with the hyphen at the beginning are from the first file. The entries with plus at the beginning are from the second file. Also, when you use -u, it actually shows the timestamps of the respective files. When it comes to this file, the timestamp is this one. When it comes to this file, the timestamp is this one. You will not see these details when you just use diff without -u. Also, we should be able to compare the contents of the two files side by side using -y option. Let's see how it look like if you use -y instead of -u or even without -u. This is the output when we use -y option. You can see the data from two files side by side in two columns. Even when there are no differences, it is actually showing up, but there is no indicator such as pipe or greater than or less than. So when it comes to the greater than, which means it is only there as part of the second file but not in the first file. When it comes to the pipe, it means there is a difference in those two lines between the two files. When there is no such indicators, it means there are no differences. Now let's improvise by adding -i, -B and -w so that we ignore the case and also the blank lines as well as the spaces and see how the output will look like. When it comes to this one, there is no difference because if we ignore the case, both are equal. When it comes to this one, there is difference. That's why there is a pipe in between. These are the blank lines which are there in the right side file but not in the left side file. That's why it is showing up like this. Then we have this entry. Again, ignoring white spaces, there are no differences between the two lines. That's why there is no indicator in the middle. Even for this one, there is no indicator because both of them are equal. With respect to outdoors, you see there is no indicator, but the outdoors is showing up here. It is because there are few empty lines after 5 golf and outdoors on the right side file. That's why it is showing indicator as the closing circular bracket rather than greater than symbol, which means there are few additional blank lines in between which are ignored, and then you can see the outdoors. And even with fan shop, if you look at this entry, there is no indicator, but the corresponding line from the second file is shown here. As there is no difference, there is no indicator. This is how you should be able to use options such as -u, -y, etc. to control the behavior of the output that is generated by diff command. Based upon your preference, you should be able to use plain diff or diff with -u or diff with -y. You just need to make sure you can interpret the output generated by these commands. As part of this section module, we are going through the details related to comparing files and folders in Linux using diff. After getting an overview of diff command, we have prepared the dataset. Then we have explored how to compare files on certain criteria. We have gone through the details such as comparing by ignoring blank lines, white spaces, and also case. Now it is time for us to explore how to use diff command to get differences between two different folders. In this case, we already have two different folders. They are nothing but retail_db and retail underscore db underscore csv. Both of them have similar folders and files, except one file differing between the two. It is nothing but part-50 under departments. Let's review the details by saying ls-ltr retail underscore db, then departments, then part-50, and also retail underscore db underscore csv, then departments, then part-50. You can see the details here. This file, which is the original one, is of size 60 bytes, whereas this one, which is manipulated, is of size 77 bytes. Except this, everything else is same. Now let's also copy a file called as readme.md, which is there under data folder, which is nothing but this one, into retail underscore db underscore csv folder. So let me say cp readme.md, then retail underscore db underscore csv, which means readme.md will be copied into this location. We can validate by saying ls-ltr on that location, not this one actually. Let me run this command, where we are actually getting folders and files from retail db and retail underscore db underscore csv. You can see readme.md as extra file under retail underscore db underscore csv. Now there are two important control arguments which we can use while recursively comparing between the folders. In this case, it will navigate through these two folders and it will check for the files with same names, and it will try to compare the files with same names in the two folder structures. If there are files like this which are extra, it will just report as differences from that file. Let's use diff-r. -r is for recursive. You can actually go through the usage of diff command once again. If you scroll up, you have -r or -- recursive, which can be used to compare the folders. You can see here, it will recursively compare any subdirectories found. Now I should be able to say -r, then retail underscore db. It is the first argument. Retail underscore db underscore csv is the second argument to this command. Now you see the details. So there is a file by name readme.md under retail db csv. You can see the details here. It did not show the contents of that file. It just reported saying that this file is only in retail underscore db underscore csv. Then it have actually gone through the rest of the folders and files, and it is able to identify there is a file called as part-50 within departments in retail db as well as retail db csv. It differs, and you can actually see the differences as well. This is how you should be able to get differences between two folder structures using diff command. It is quite powerful. We should be able to compare code bases like this, and we should be able to explore the differences and fix those differences. At times, we just want to know the names of the files rather than going to the details. For that, you can add one more control argument, which is nothing but q. It will only list the names with differences instead of listing the differences itself. Now you can see that it is saying retail underscore db underscore csv have readme.md, but not retail underscore db. That's why it is saying only in retail underscore db underscore csv. The file name is nothing but readme.md. Also, instead of showing all the differences between these two files, it is just saying these two differ. This is how you should be able to use q and just get the list of files differ between the two folder structures. When we use diff-r, it have just reported all the differences considering blank lines, white spaces, and also case. If you wanted to filter out those and get only the real differences without considering blank lines, white spaces, as well as case, then we should be able to improvise by saying diff-rq, then I for ignoring the case. We have already gone through those details while comparing the files. W for white spaces, then B for blank lines, then you can hit enter. We also have q, that's why it is only providing brief details. It is not actually showing the differences. Now let me remove the q, let me hit enter. You can see the differences between the two folders. Retail underscore db underscore csv only have readme.md, the other one doesn't have. Also, when it comes to part-50 under retail db departments and retail db csv departments, ignoring case, white spaces, and blank lines, these are the only differences. This is how you should be able to get whatever differences you are looking for based on the requirements by combining multiple control arguments. While using multiple control arguments, you can either separate them out as we have seen earlier, or we can club them. For example, in this case, we can also use control arguments like this. Instead of clubbing all of these together, we can actually separate these out like this. So in this case, I'm saying diff-r space -i space -w space -B, then the folders which we want to compare, you can see the output. So either you can separate the control arguments like this, or you can club them like this. That being said, make sure you are really comfortable with the diff command. It comes very handy in troubleshooting data quality issues and also troubleshooting code related issues between multiple branches. Diff is a very powerful technique to troubleshoot issues. Make sure you are really comfortable with it.